Hi, everybody. Just waiting for Diz to request to come into the live and we can get started. Happy World Oceans Day. Looking forward to having a lovely chat with you guys and talking about our work for Out Cutlery. It was a great opportunity for us to share all of the, work we've done. And here we go. Let me just let her in. Yeah. Hi,
Hi,
how are you, Diz?
I'm
Welcome. Thank you
good.
for being here.
Yeah,
It's
thanks for having
it,
me, Sheila.
it's such a good good opportunity for us to reconnect too and chat a little bit about all the things that you guys have been working on. So, welcome everybody. As you guys might know, I'm Sheila Morovati. I'm the founder of habitsofwaste.org, and Diz Petit is my guest today, and she is the head of Civic Labs, and she works at Postmates. The thing that brought us together was Out Cutlery, and it's been a wonderful experience to see how a small idea that kind of was just a simple shift could make such a big impact. Since today is World Oceans Day, we want to talk a lot about how those simple things, the single-use plastics that just we don't really think twice about, end up adding up and piling up and becoming this massive problem. So thank you, Postmates. Laura says that you guys jumped in and did this. Really, it's a huge undertaking to change anything. And I actually want to acknowledge that because you and I spoke a little while ago that really anything that the user experiences needs to really be thought through. So while to our side, we're like, oh, it's so easy, just change your default setting. It's actually much more complicated. Maybe, just jump in right there and tell us a little bit about your experience with it. What happened? Did we bombard you with emails? Did it seem like, tell us what you experienced so far with it, and then we can dig in further.
Awesome. Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Diz, just like Sheila said. I'm the head of our Civic Labs team at Postmates. Just to give a little bit of context, if there's some folks on who aren't familiar with what Postmates is, we're an on-demand delivery platform. We deliver over 5 million deliveries every month. So we have the opportunity, as we cover 80% of households across the United States, to make a really big impact on things like sustainability. So in October of 2019, we actually had a couple members of the Postmates team on the engineering side, one of our interns, and then paired with some of our full-time engineers, actually built the feature to automatically opt customers out of getting utensils with their order. It was awesome to see them do it, but we didn't do any publicizing of it. We didn't really do anything to really expand on that. So when Sheila and all the folks reached out from the Out Cutlery campaign, it really did start to make some waves within the company of me getting a lot of emails forwarded saying, hey, we should do this. And lots of customers saying, you should do this. And I'm like, oh, we already do this. We should do a better job of sharing what we're doing and how we're doing it. So the emails and the campaign definitely made a big difference.
Yeah, it's so good to hear that all of these efforts, thousands of people just right here on our social media clicked the link, made sure that you guys heard us. And it just goes to show that if we speak up and if we give a little bit of an effort, and I mean, what's going on in the world right now, it's just like on a much more massive level that it does work. Like we matter. We do have to use our voices to make change happen. And on something like cutlery that affected our planet so much, that was our effort. And we're so happy to know that we should keep on going and get all the food delivery companies on board, just because that is something that really is important in order to make the change complete. So was it difficult for you guys to make that change happen?
Technically, it's challenging, like you said, to do anything when you're working with an app that has millions and millions of users. We want to make sure that the experience is seamless for everyone who's ordering. Um, so working with all of the different teams that are required in order to make sure that we are doing it the right way, that our customers are having a good experience, that the restaurants are receiving that information, and that the courier is also informed that this person has requested to not receive this in case the single-use cutlery is actually out on the bar for them to grab versus the restaurant putting it in the bag. Like sharing it to all of those different streams of the marketplace is really important to make sure we do that right so that we can reduce the error rate as much as possible. Because Sheila, I know one of the biggest things that you and I learned throughout this process is even if, excuse me, even if the customer is selecting that, there is a lot of work to do on making sure that the restaurants are aware that this is an option, that customers are opting in to this option, and that we don't want the single-use cutlery, because I know when I use the the app myself, and I know that you've had some friends who've texted you and been like, "Oh, I
Oh
still
yeah.
got it." So I think there's still a lot of work to do in that area.
For sure. Actually, someone just posted asking the question saying that restaurants don't always comply. How do we change that? And I think you just touched on that. But what I do want to say is, guys, if there are any questions you might have specifically for Diz, feel free to chime in and I'll read them out to her. So I just want to add that in too. I think the biggest question for all of us is like, do we know some numbers on how much cutlery has been reduced since you guys implemented cutout cutlery?
Yeah. So, our estimate is that the default change will save millions of unneeded utensils every month from being introduced into the environment. So I think we have the potential to save these millions, and we do have a lot of our customers. I'm not able to release specific numbers, but we do have a lot of our customers who are making this choice. It's actually an automatic choice. They're automatically opted in to not receiving utensils. They
Right.
manually have to press the button in order to receive them. So a majority of our customers are making the choice to not receive them. But like I said, next is making sure that we can help the restaurants understand that when it's not requested, that we really don't need them to provide it.
Right, absolutely. That is our challenge right now. And I think once we get all four of the largest food delivery companies on board, that will be a lot more smooth for all parties because then there's just a new habit, a new normal, a new reality that's just like understood. We don't need to send this out unless it's requested. So it'll take a lot of time to undo what has already been done. But even last night, I got cutlery and it was not a Postmates order, but I just like stuffed it in the back of the pantry because I just can't throw it away, but I know I'm never going to use it. So anyway, here we go. What was I going to say? So the food delivery in home has increased a lot since COVID.
Mhm.
So I feel like one of the things that we talked about with another one of your team members was how green people are actually being by not opting in to get the cutlery, and they don't even realize that they're actually doing something positive for the environment. Have you guys noticed anything of the uptick with the food delivery increase since COVID-19 and since everyone's home anyway? Does it seem to show you a little bit more of a pattern of not receiving the cutlery even more so now than ever before?
Yeah, I think for people who don't necessarily work in the food space, it's a little bit challenging to imagine why someone would or would not receive utensils. I don't think a lot of people really spend a lot of time thinking about that side of the business.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so now that we do have so many people who are ordering at home, versus when you would need utensils, like let's say you're in a hotel, or maybe you're at the office, but most offices also can accommodate utensils at this point. It's important to think about that and how people are at home, so they don't necessarily need those items. So we definitely have seen an increase um, in that. But if we're thinking about Postmates if you take,
It
cool.
says if you take the plastic, it becomes our problem. So I've gotten pretty loud about it, not receiving it. You can refuse it at the door. It's a really good point. The more we consume the plastic, the more plastic will be made. And I know that this particular campaign, Cut Out Cutlery, is essentially a refusal, opportunity for us to refuse. And that is a key thing for everybody to know out there, that if you refuse the plastic, they won't make as much plastic. And incidentally, the reason why this has become such a win-win is because restaurants are just throwing money away. So at now more than ever, we need to support our restaurants in saving money. So why get all this unnecessary excess plastic and napkins and salt and pepper, all of those plastic things, and then sure enough you want to throw it away but you feel guilty. So just figuring out ways and solutions. But of course, there's a much bigger mammoth problem after this, and I know you and I talked about it too, Diz, and you guys are doing your part to think of ways to reduce plastic packaging and coming up with reducing plastic bags and all sorts of things, because you guys viewing may not realize this, but Diz's team and many people in her company really do care, and they're trying to come up with solutions. So perhaps you can talk a little bit about what you guys have kind of coming up, or I know that COVID's restrictions are kind of going to slow things down right now, but hopefully after this we can, jump right back into what we hope to, achieve, or you achieve.
Yeah, and just kind of going off of what the folks in the chat are saying, I also earlier this year refused the things at the dental office, and they really were not happy with it. It is such a habit that we're going to have to change, that we're not trying to be rude, that we just already have those items. We don't necessarily need them. Maybe we're purchasing them in a different way. So definitely interesting. But and also to Laura's point, yeah, the drivers can or won't take the utensils back. But if you are using the pickup product, or you're going to pick up your own orders, I think that's another opportunity, even though it's just that one-on-one interaction with the restaurant, but to let them know, like, hey, I am the customer and I actually don't want these items. Thank you so much, but I'm good. I have utensils at home. So
another thing that I've also done with that is, if I do receive the cutlery from an order that I didn't request, I just call the restaurant directly and just say, I want you to know I got the cutlery, but I didn't ask for it. You guys don't need to waste it, waste your restaurant dollars on this. I also know that I didn't include it in my, application, like the opt-in, and they always say, oh, we're so sorry, we didn't realize. You're right, it's not in there. And it reminds the manager to connect back to their team members too, because ultimately that's where the cutlery is coming in. So yeah, go ahead.
Cutlery should be an extra cost, like bags in California. Definitely an interesting solution. Okay, so just to go back a little bit for context, so the Civic Labs team at Postmates, we really focus on 3 different areas. The first one is promoting food system sustainability. The second one is advancing women and veteran-owned businesses. And then the third one is fostering community engagement. So we really do everything we can to focus specifically on those 3 areas. We also have a 3-sided marketplace, which really puts us in a unique position. When folks in the chat are talking about cutting it off at the source, I mean, 5 million deliveries a month is a huge opportunity, especially if it keeps growing. So if we can get people like Uber and DoorDash and the other folks who are in this space to make similar changes, that would make a really big difference with how many people are getting takeout ordered to their home. So with Postmates, we're a 3-sided marketplace. We have the merchants that we work with. We have the fleet who are completing the deliveries. And then we have our customers who are the ones who are using the app. So we actually have 3 opportunities to make a really big difference. So with, I wrote down a note here so I wouldn't forget what it was. So if we're thinking about the merchants, what can we do to make it the default to do something more eco-friendly? Can we consider as a company bulk purchasing compostable packaging and then start distributing it to people who are using styrofoam? Because that's another thing, is a lot of us who are based in, California or in larger cities, I think we have the privilege that we kind of forget that when we're covering 80% of the United States, that also includes a lot of communities that are still using things like styrofoam and things that are not recyclable, or maybe even places that don't have compost and recycling facilities. So if we're thinking about that, where can we actually make the biggest difference, maybe that's the way, is we actually work with the restaurants who are in those areas that are still using the least eco-friendly items
Mm-hmm.
and providing something that is a lower cost, lower barrier of entry for them to be able to access those things. So yeah, those are just some of the things that like our team is thinking about on the fleet side, on the customer side. I mean, I think there's a ton of different stuff that we could be doing. And earlier this year, we were really lucky to bring on a new team member. Her name's Renee. She has a really deep background in sustainability. So she's definitely helping guide us through the process and making sure that we're considering a lot of different options, things that have never been done before, but that's kind of why it's exciting to have this job, is because we really can try a bunch of new stuff to impact these three different groups.
And I've worked a little bit with Renee thanks to the introduction you made. She's amazing, and I really think that the whole Postmates organization really has kind of been a leader in here, and I think you guys will do some really good things because you will lead the way to sustainability. I think Climate Reality Los Angeles is saying the same thing. That's good leadership because you could lead the way in sustainability, for sure.
Yeah,
And
we're really
and I
lucky. Renee's
yeah,
on
and I
vacation right now, or she'd be doing this.
and side note, everybody, I just want you guys to know I'm so proud and excited to have Diz on our advisory board here at Habits of Waste. That's how much I personally felt connected to this company and this organization. So I invited her to be an advisory board member. So I feel extra lucky to have somebody so just in the know, especially in this space. Because right now, a lot of the organizations that I work with in the plastic pollution coalitions and things like that are really saying, we've got to do something about the packaging, we've got to do something about the bags. All sorts of different ideas are coming up. So we definitely think there's a lot of work to be done. It's just a lot harder to execute on this massive level. Cutlery, for example, was one where I think it was kind of like low-hanging fruit to give people the idea that, hey, we could do something different. It doesn't have to always be the same as before. And cutlery is a big problem. It's 40 billion pieces going into our trash, and many of them ending up in our oceans per year. 40 billion. I mean, and most of it's not even wanted or needed. So I think that is a huge deal. One of the other things you and I talked about, Diz, a while back was how much space there is in the restaurant partners. So a lot of people ask me, why can't the restaurants offer a choice of, sustainable packaging for a little more money versus, the typical whatever they have, plastic or polystyrene. And that was one of the things that I think we kind of forget a little bit, is like the restaurants have a lot of pressure on them already. And so how do we support them and have expectations that are realistic? So that's something that I think we need to just kind of address as well today, because it seems like easy to sit here as an environmentalist and be like, well, they should do this and they should do that. And what about this? But in actuality, they do need support and protection in order to stay alive, really.
Yeah. I mean, when we're thinking about restaurants and the margins that they have, it's not super realistic to really consider that. I mean, I've personally worked in restaurants and cafes before, and I'm sure a lot of other folks who are on the call have. And when you go into the back room and you just see the boxes of things that you have to have in order to keep the business running, cups, plates, napkins, the things that you have to have. And then just thinking about doubling that to also carry all of that in a sustainable option if the restaurant or the cafe is not necessarily doing that to start with. That's a lot to put on a small business. And so I think it's really important to consider that and say, with the Out Cutlery campaign, I think that was a really, really smart and effective way to start this type of work and start the conversation with restaurants, because it's a small thing that cannot be included. Obviously, there's a lot of intention and a lot of work going on right now around making sure that plastics don't end up in our oceans, because we have all these photos of turtles with straws stuck in them.
Noon, that marine biologist, you guys, at noon, she'll be talking to us. She's the
Oh,
one who
cool.
pulled out the straw from the sea turtle's nostril, and
Oh,
that video went viral, and it really did propel us to be able to do some of the work we
exactly.
did, such as the plastic straw ban in Malibu and so much more. But yes, that's she's on at noon today with us.
That's
So
awesome.
tune in, yeah.
Yeah, so I think like that type of stuff where there's something really viral and something really visceral that people can actually latch onto, it really helps versus this kind of abstract idea, especially for folks who haven't worked in the restaurant industry or with restaurants before. It's just the space is so tight already and the margins are already so tight, especially right now with everything going on. I think it's important to be really conscientious about how we approach the restaurant owners and not necessarily blaming them, but working on more of like a shift in how our consumer behavior really impacts the way that they do business versus shaming or blaming.
You'll never get anywhere with shame or blame. We learned that definitely. Actually, we're my organization is working with the National Restaurant Association right now as well to kind of try, just like you said, you're a three-faceted company. That's one of the angles that we're also using is to connect with the restaurants and try to get them to understand that there are options that you can have and don't wait for it to be imposed upon you by the food delivery companies or the consumer. Like, here are some options that you can take right at the beginning, right when you're getting ready to place that first order. There really has to be a way, because actually I recently went to an event that showed us, how quickly the cost for these more expensive sustainable items can plummet once there's more, demand for it. So
Right.
I think there's a lot of power that the Restaurant Association has right there too, to help these companies buy better products. And then, it's just like, we got to get that snowball going so that the prices can come down,
Right.
because that's the other issue. It's the pricing. So,
yeah. So how do we convince the McDonalds and the Burger Kings of the world that are doing all of this takeout packaging to do that so the smaller businesses can benefit from that cost reduction?
That's a really good point. And I do know that in Australia, McDonald's did make a switch from the plastic cutlery. So that was huge already. And I think that we can do it, just like Climate Reality is saying here. This is just the beginning. We can do it. It's, again, the tip of the iceberg. It's important to just break through. And I think that's what Out Cutlery did. It just broke through and gave us hope that there's another option. There's another way. I think, again,
it definitely shows that.
Yeah, I think so too. And I really do feel like I don't even know if I knew that you guys did 5 million deliveries a month. That is a huge number. And I'm sure it went up since COVID-19 too, because it just feels like everybody's ordering in. I mean, I'm ordering in way more often too. So I'm going to stop for questions. Does anybody have some questions they want to jump in? And we can definitely ask Diz anything that's coming up. No? Okay, that's good. Diz, is there anything you want to add to the conversation and just leave us with as we're, wrapping it up?
Sure. So I saw that Dan joined, and Dan is one of my coworkers at Postmates who has really, really been helping
Hi, Dan.
to push this agenda and to make sure that we have accurate reporting and data on it. And he's actually the one who brought it up to me that we actually were having a lot of restaurants that were still providing these items. So I think that was like a real learning moment for me, was to think, okay, like, we built this great feature. We thought we did this like really awesome thing. We were going to change, millions and millions of pieces of plastic a month from going in the ocean. And then we were like, oh, dang, like, okay, so actually there's a next component is like, how do we get the restaurants, like we said. So, hey, Dan, electric vehicles, I don't really work in that area on what that looks like, but would be very cool.
That would be cool. As far as, again, I think, and what do you think about, first of all, two things. One is legislation. How would do you think that would be like the final straw that would get everybody on board and 100% compliant? Or do you think it's more important for us to focus on getting Grubhub and DoorDash on board, since Uber Eats and you guys, who are the two biggest ones, are already doing it? What do you think is the best next step for us to take, if you had to say?
So I think that personally, the plastic straw ban that you all helped to get passed in Malibu made a huge difference, because I think a lot of people saw that in the same way they saw the removal of the plastic bags and then the 5 cent like per bag tax. I'm not sure if the tax cost
fee cost
fee everyone kind of imagined that was going to ripple through the United States like that. And so in Sacramento, and gosh, I even believe it was in like Seattle and other places in Northern California, where people were actually starting to be like, okay, like we really aren't going to be able to have straws anymore. We need
It
to do
got
something about
serious.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it got very serious, and all of a sudden there's this boom in different people inventing different types of straws that are not paper, because paper straws don't count. They don't work very well.
Yeah.
Um,
We've heard.
but like Starbucks completely changed like the lid. I mean, for their cold beverages to the point where now you can just sip out of the lid like you would a hot cup. So there's no straw there. So I think getting like a major corporation to make those changes is huge. So I think that legislation really makes a big difference in those areas. And I think that's how we can most impact large companies that have the ability to do research and development and really implement these things company wide. I think that legislation sometimes can hurt small businesses, though. So I think there's a balance there that kind of has to be met um, in terms of making sure that we're doing something that's equitable for the people who are doing what they can to keep their business afloat. But at the same time, there's a lot of folks in you know, the Starbucks size company that have the ability to be the leaders in that area. So if we're thinking about restaurants that employ more than 100 people or 500 people or something like that, I think that legislation can be really positive and impactful in that way.
That's a great point. I definitely, we recently had another one of our advisory board members on board who was on an Instagram live. He's a vice chair of sociology at UCLA, and he specializes in social movements. And he keeps on telling me, like, you want to do like the grassroots as well as the legislation to kind of sandwich it together, and then you'll have almost a recipe for successful change. So unless you do kind of both angles and both sides of squeezing it in, it won't really be as easy to implement. So we have been obviously in talks with getting Cutout Cutlery to be, passed, because the good news is that when a company like Postmates or Uber Eats, are you guys global or just national? I can't remember.
We're in the United States.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if you do it in LA, you're doing it everywhere. So if Cutout Cutlery gets implemented on Postmates in Los Angeles or in California, the application automatically is going to be changed nationwide. So
Exactly.
it is a really powerful tool because of the fact that you can't have different settings on different, states and
Cities.
cities and
Yeah.
things like that. That would be a really big confusing mess. So I think that that's another beautiful thing. It's like we can really just a simple nudge changes the game. I just recently heard that chewing gum sales have dropped tremendously. And it was so
Interesting.
random, but the reason is that the human behavior at the checkout line is also really different because we all have cell phones now. So we're looking down on our
Mm.
phones and we're not paying attention to chewing gum to buy that last minute, little thing. So it's funny because we do have a lot of random behaviors that we don't even know about or think about until someone tells you some fact like that chewing gum sales are down, significantly. So it's just figuring out ways to kind of highlight what our human behavior on a massive level can shift and change, and as easy as possible is our goal. So anyone out there listening, make sure you give us your ideas and we'll try and take them to the next level. Cutout Cutlery was, a simple one. And my friend Laura called me one day. She's like, what in the world is going on? I have a ton of this. I don't know what to do with it. Another friend of mine, he kept on telling me I order in because my wife works and I can't cook, so I order in every day. I feel guilty to throw the cutlery away. I have drawers full of it. They have to do something. So I just want to thank you for listening, and and your team, and Dan, of course, you too, at Postmates, for really joining in on this movement and being a leader and making so much positive change already. And we do have work ahead of us still, and we'll still make sure that we do it. But it's World Oceans Day, and today is the day that we get to celebrate the good work we've done together, and keep going. That's the motto. Keep going.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Cool.
Diz, for being here.
Yeah. Thanks for your time and thanks for all your work in this space. We definitely wouldn't be where we are on this type of work without the work that you and your team have done. So
Oh, that's
definitely
really
appreciate
nice.
it.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you so much. And I'm glad to have you with us right now as on our advisory team so that we can keep on making more change. So
Yeah.
thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.